Hey everybody in the reggae universe, welcome to A Conversation in Dub, hosted by me, Mark Ramondi.
And me, James Pasqua. This podcast is all about exploring the massive world of reggae and dub music, from its roots in Jamaica to its influence on various music genres worldwide.
This podcast also explores the intricacies of dub through insightful conversations, interviews with artists, and in-depth analysis of iconic tracks. We don't just talk about the music, but also the stories behind it, the techniques used in its production, and the social and political context that shaped its development.
Our goal is to promote mindful listening, taking you, the listener, on the journey the artist intended. Through this process, we hope to introduce you to new music or give you a new insight on music you already know and love.
This podcast is brought to you by Rootfire, a platform for reggae music worldwide with a mission to empower artists and nurture the community that supports them. You're here because you love reggae music and want to be a part of that community. We're here to help connect the dots.
If you have any feedback for us, be sure to email us at aconversationindub@gmail.com or message us on Facebook or Instagram at aconversationindub. We love hearing from you. Now,
let's get to the show.
This week, we are joined by Devin Morrison, a.k.a. Man Like Devin of Band Like Devin, of The Expanders, of a host of the Reggae Podclash, reggae historian. Devin, we're so glad that we finally made this happen after so long of trying.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Yes. Thanks for having me. Very nice to be here.
Yes.
Yeah, man. We've been trying. I know we've been trying to juggle this for quite some time now. So.
Yeah, I apologize for the part I played in the delay. It's a hectic schedule sometimes, but yeah, I'm glad we made it.
We're all on that same page,
bro. You even know from doing podcasts and stuff. James and I go through this every single week, where like we have a plan and then like nothing. Even yesterday, we were going to record an episode and I was late to it, and then his power went out. So it's like
sounds about right.
These things happen. So like we're just really, really excited that we can get into some stuff today. And welcome, man. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to talk about. I'm still repping this album, Wheel and Shoulder, because it's the perfect like summer, late summer album. So this is actually a perfect time to do this. But before we get into that album specifically, I wanted to kind of just jump backwards and just find out what it was that got you into reggae music. And maybe our listeners don't know. You've probably shared it on your podcast and other areas, but like, what was the like, okay, this is it for me moment for you for reggae music?
I mean, I don't know that there was a specific moment, but growing up in Los Angeles, I was born in the early 80s, and so kind of like being a formative kid in the 90s, I was into punk rock, and there was lots of ska and punk rock happening in Los Angeles, and I was really into that, and as were my friends, and I had some friends, in particular my friend Ben Malamet. He is original Expanders drummer, and he is in a band called the California Honey Drops. He was friends with another kid named Devin, and Devin's father is Roger Steffens, who is one of the world's greatest reggae archivists, and he's got a big archive at his house in Echo Park. And so we started hanging out over there and started making the connection between the ska we were listening to and how that had developed from ska that originated in Jamaica in the early 60s. And that was kind of how, and then quickly making the connection between ska, Jamaican ska and reggae. And that's kind of how that connection was made. And then I think, being able to, this was like pre-internet days, but we had this amazing access point to Jamaican music via Roger Steffens. So we would go to his house and he would make us tapes and just had access to all this, now you can go on YouTube and pretty much find instantly any rare recording that's ever been made. But in those days, that was not the case. And so we had access to all this great music from him. And I think just being into punk music and being into the kind of rebel aspect of it there's obviously a lot of similarities thematically from that standpoint with reggae and punk. So we just all were drawn to reggae from all those angles.
Yeah, that's such a unique way to get into a genre too, just to like dive into the rare stuff that nobody is listening to. You know, it's not like, oh, I found Bob Marley and then I found the Gladiators and I found, all these. He probably went deep and showed you like Bob Marley and the Wailers sessions that weren't released and, things like that.
Oh, for sure. We were spoiled at that time. We were getting all kinds of great tapes from him. He's a very generous sharer. It's not, his whole mission and of his archives is to share the music, so anytime we'd want to come over and just make tapes, he'd let us just, sometimes he'd make us tapes, but then he'd let us just completely raid his archives and make tapes for ourselves. And so it was, so we were the ones at school making tapes for all our friends and getting them into it. Cause like I said, this is definitely before you could go on the internet and find all this stuff. So it was it was amazing to have that access to that.
Nice.
That's so cool. I wonder, like, when you were in it, like when you were making those tapes and you were just finding these different artists, did you kind of know at the time, like, how special of an opportunity that was to be able to, like, have your hands on those things? Or was this like this crazy retrospective thing looking back where it's like, man, that's kind of crazy?
We knew. We for sure knew. Because, sometimes you'd go over to Roger's house and this didn't happen to me until I was much older, but my friend Ben would go over there more often. And he'd come to school on Wednesday, and I'd be like, "What's up? What'd you do last night?" He's like, "Oh, we went to Roger's house, and Lee Perry was there." And I was like, "What? Lee Perry was like?" People would just show up to his archives because he's known for this. So not just like Jamaican luminaries, but like straight up like Leonardo DiCaprio would be there one day. You know what I mean? Carlos Santana would be there. Just people who were kind of like hip and in the know made Roger's house a stopping point for them when they would be in LA. So it was like, It had a special vibe, even apart from just like the fact that he had this crazy archive, it was like, definitely, he's one of those people that you come across from time to time where just like when they're in the room, they're kind of like the presence in the room, nice. And it just feels special. Like that's how Roger is. And that's how his house always was. So yeah, we knew it was like a really special thing that we were, being given access
That's
to.
Really cool. Is he still doing that? Do you know? Is he still collecting?
So he actually he's been trying to sell his archive for decades. He was in 1985, I might have that year wrong, but right around there, a Japanese businessman offered him $1 million for his archive, which was a lot of money in the mid 80s. And he turned him down. And he over the years, he's turned down lots of offers because his one stipulation for selling his archives was that he didn't want it to go into some rich person's private collection where no one ever would see it again. He said when he sold it, it would come with the stipulation that it would become a museum in Jamaica that everyone has access to. And he finally, you can Google this. There's been some articles written about it recently. He sold it. I forget all the details, but I know that is going to happen. I don't know in terms of the museum being established. It's going to happen. I don't know if the transfer of the goods has started yet, but I know that he did recently finally sell it, which is like bittersweet to me because I know he's been wanting to do that, and I'm happy for him. But it's like, it's not going to be there to visit anymore.
Exactly. Oh, that's crazy. I mean, it's a reason to go to Jamaica and check it out. That's
for sure,
really
for
cool.
sure.
That's such a great thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I hope that, because he did, this was maybe in the late 90s, he did a residency at the Queen Mary where it was called the Bob Marley Museum, and his stuff was set up, and you could go tour through this one area at the Queen Mary and see it all, but you couldn't, it was different from going to his house because there was no mechanism where you could like go listen to the records. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing about Roger's house. He would just go and pull out records and put them on or tapes and whatever, So I do hope that the museum has some, I don't know how it would work. I think nowadays with streaming and everything, it might be easier to do. Maybe there could be some digital jukebox database in the museum or something, but I hope there's some way that you could actually like go and throw on some headphones and listen to things.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. You probably can't touch any of it, but you could probably listen to samples.
Well, some of it. I mean, because that's the thing. He had a lot of music, a crazy amount of music, but he also had artifacts. Like he had things like the first 7-inch that, like the first day Bob Marley recorded Judge Not as a teenager, and Cox and Dog gave him that first pressing. Like Roger has that record because he had a close relationship to Bob's mom, and at some point Bob's mom gave him a bunch of stuff and said, I don't want, this stuff isn't even safe with me here. Like you take it because I know you will, take care of it. And so he had things like that, just crazy artifacts.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
that's mind blowing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my!
From that, I mean, obviously you fell in love with reggae. So is the Expanders your first like band that you were a part of doing that kind of stuff?
Doing reggae, yeah. I was in a band in junior high with Ben that I mentioned earlier and our friend Christian. And then we were trying, and then we started the Expanders in 1999. I was in 11th grade, and we were playing reggae. But then when we graduated high school, Ben went to college, and we couldn't keep the whole band together, so we started, John and I, who is original Expanders member, and John Butcher and I grew up together on the same street. I've known him my entire life. We formed a punk band right out of high school and did that for like 2 years. But then that fell apart, and then we put the Expanders back together around 2003, and it was. And then after that, it was, just Expanders.
Nice. And that was always like a collective type of band, right? Like people were coming in and out.
For the first half of the band, yes. It was people coming and going, and we didn't really, there was years where we were just an acoustic band. And then when Chiquis Lasoya joined the band, he first came in just as a third harmony singer, but then quickly started playing bass. And then we started wanting to have a drummer, and we would have like different guest drummers. We never really had a set lineup. But then around 2008, we kind of settled in on the core 4 guys, which was myself, John Butcher, Cheekies, and then John Asher on drums. But we were still shuffling through keyboard players. And then around 2014 is when Roy Fischel joined the band. And then from 2014 on, that was the set lineup.
Nice. I got to see the Expanders maybe twice while I was on the East Coast.
Nice.
And I remember the first time I saw you guys, the thing that really stood out was like you had this message basically that was like, hey, I know we don't look Jamaican and we didn't grow up like that, but we're just trying to share the message that those foundation artists were trying to set out to do. And I remember that really like stuck with me. I really appreciated that because you don't really see a lot of that happening with bands. While they may agree with the message and are carrying it on, they don't explicitly say it all the time. Like, hey, this is what we're trying to do here. We're just trying to give the message. I really appreciated that.
Mm-hmm.
I had to say it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, we when we were touring, so with the first half of the band in the 2000s, we were kind of splitting our time between playing. We were very heavily invested in the ska scene in LA. There still is, but at that time there was a really thriving traditional ska scene. There were bands like C Spot and Ocean 11 and Chris Murray Combo, lots and lots of bands and Hepcat, of course, that were playing traditional Jamaican style ska. And even though we didn't play ska, we played reggae. That's the kind of scene we were in, and that's the whole that's the world we were playing in. It was very insulated. We weren't really aware of any other reggae going on, except in New York there were bands like the Slackers doing a similar thing. And then we were also backing old Jamaican artists when they would come through LA. But then around 2012, 2013, we started becoming aware of the American reggae scene, bands like Revolution and Slightly Stupid and things like that. And those bands started taking us on tour. and it was really kind of at that point where we made a conscious decision to to directly talk about what you were just mentioning on stage, because we were the only band. Well, I don't want to say that, but we definitely were coming from a different place than a lot of the other bands in that scene were. You know, a lot of those bands are coming from the Sublime kind of branch of the tree, which I love Sublime. I've always been a huge Sublime fan, but by the time I got into Sublime, I already knew about Jamaican music. And so it was important to us, having come from a place where we had worked with dozens of Jamaican artists by that time and had been in a scene that was heavily steeped in Jamaican music, that we now that we're in this kind of this new scene, to make sure we don't lose sight of the fact that, you know, all this music we're playing comes from Jamaica and was created and is still being created by Jamaicans, you know, and who aren't the ones always reaping the financial benefits of this music that they created and continue to make, you know?
Right. And we just talked to, I don't know if you're familiar with him, Henry K, last week. And he brought up the exact same thing about, you know, a lot of bands, they're not, I don't want to say they're not appreciating the foundation of reggae music or where it came from, but the message is slowly getting lost as it goes on, and, you know, trying to preserve that as much as possible. So totally aligned with exactly what you're saying here.
Yeah, I think that, you know, Jamaican music has, in terms of reggae music, it's always been, at least the stuff I listen to it was created by poor people in, you know, dealing with the lasting and continued effects of white supremacist colonialism. And you can't separate that reality from Jamaican music itself, you know? And so that's the music we always listened to, and we came from that aesthetic, I guess, and that ideal. Bands that come from the, you know, maybe got into it through Sublime and bands like that, it's not like one's better than another. It just it's coming from a different place. You know, the American reggae scene kind of comes more from a place of like, this is party music, or it's, you know, weed themed music. And so it's just a different source of inspiration, I guess, for the songwriting and for the whole vibe of it, you know. And it's not like one's better than another. It's just they just come from different places. There's overlap, of course, you know, but it's like, I try not to. It's like, it was important for us to be direct about how we felt about Jamaican music, but it's not like we expected or looked down upon other bands for not doing that.
100%,
because why should, you know, it's like, if you're coming from a certain place, like that's where you're coming from, and why would you be expected to, you know, suddenly be repping some whole other you know, scene? So it is what it is. It's all cool.
I love how you put that.
Yeah, exactly. And I could totally see how you would feel that sense of responsibility, because for you guys, like, the way you guys got into the genre and your representation of it is totally not the norm. And, you know, recognizing that puts a little bit of extra responsibility on your shoulders, where it's like, okay, you guys end up becoming that bridge to help other people who got into the music differently understand where it came from. You know, it's like that little moment of education that is what helps spread that understanding, and also gets people curious about the roots of reggae, because there's so many people who just get into it. Okay, they heard Sublime, and then they just go to one like American reggae band to another without really understanding or going back to even see, where did this come from? Where were the original inspirations for it? So I think a lot of that message is one of the things that makes people aware of the fact that there's so much more to this than they even know about.
Right. Yeah, it's true. And a lot of that was kind of an indirect, like you're talking about the responsibility and things like that. A lot of that was an indirect, or I'll say like a side effect. Like that did happen. I think we did like turn a lot of people on to getting into Jamaican music, but that was really all a side effect of just why we were doing it in the first place, which is just straight up that we love reggae music. Right. You know, that's always been it's not like we said, oh, we need to form a band to go to go inform people and teach people, you know, like I don't even feel qualified to be doing that. It's like we're musicians. I'm a musician. I'm always going to play music, and Jamaican music is the music that I love. And so that's what's going to come out primarily. You know what I mean? And then all the other, then once you're doing that, you know, I think it's important to try to be, you know, have some kind of ethics involved and pay tribute to where it's coming from. And, you know, the financial part is important because exploitation is not just some like, it's become this like words like appropriation and exploitation have become almost these like catchphrases that get thrown around, and you lose sight of what that really means, you know, but it's a real thing. It's like, if you're taking the product that's been created by a marginalized people and you're pushing that part of it and you're profiting from that part of it, but you're completely ignoring all the other realities of the situation, you know, of the poverty and the fact that in Jamaica, the recording industry was such that people didn't get paid for years and there's no royalties and all this kind of stuff. And then if you're out there taking that work and making money off of it, then it's like you have a responsibility at the bare minimum to pay tribute to, you know, the source of it all.
100%.
In my opinion.
Absolutely.
I couldn't agree with that more. It's, you know, sometimes hard to understand, like, what can we be doing as artists, you know, to help support this or help support the music that we grew up listening to. It's like a hard bridge to gap sometimes.
Yeah.
That's why we have this show, because sometimes, you know, we do feature a lot of new music, but we do go back and feature foundation artists, and maybe people are not as familiar with people such as Pablo Moses or Johnny Osborne, or, you know, we want to introduce that music and how revolutionary it was at the time to people, and maybe they'll go down the rabbit hole, if you will.
Right. And, you know, and there's a lot of great new music being made in America too. And, you know, I always got to shout out bands like Slightly Stoopid and Revolution specifically, because I know that both of them have taken, you know, Slightly Stoopid basically has Don Carlos as like a honorary member of the band, you know, and bring him on tour and have exposed him to a whole new audience. Revolution's done the same. I know like Revolution will bring artists like Luton Faya on tour to open for them when, you know, maybe like the numbers aren't there from a strictly, you know, like the booking agents might be like, why are you bringing this artist? They're not going to bring any people to the show. And they've been proactive in saying, no, we want to, you know, bring these guys with us. So there are a lot of bands that are, you know, that are definitely doing it right, I think.
Yeah. And
I love that.
Just going along with the journey, you depart from the Expanders, you join Long Beach Dub Allstars for their comeback. What was that transition like for you?
It wasn't like it's not like I left the Expanders to join Long Beach Dub Allstars. I left the Expanders in like spring of 2018, and I had no plans whatsoever. I did want to record a solo album, but I hadn't started on it really yet. And then just kind of out of the blue, I got a call from Roger Rivas, who's one of my best friends. We did the Reggae Podclash together. He's a founding member of the Agrolites, plays organ in the Agrolites, and he's kind of been on the periphery of the Expanders. He never was actually in the band, but he's on all of our records, just about.
You can hear it.
Yeah. And he mixed our the first cover album we did, so we've got, Expanders has 2 original albums and 2 cover albums. And the first cover album, Old Time Something, Come Back Again, is mixed by Roger. So he's always been involved. Anyway, he had been playing with Long Beach Dub Allstars for a few years at that point. And their original guitar player, Miguel, owner of Skunk Records, he didn't want to be touring the way Long Beach Dub Allstars was planning to go tour.
Right.
And so Roger suggested me, and so that's kind of how that link started. And I've been playing off and on with them since then. That's the All-Stars is kind of like truly an All-Stars thing at this point, because they, sometimes I can do shows. Sometimes Miguel will still do shows. They've got a couple other guitar players who can fill in for shows. Same thing with the keyboard position because Roger's busy with the Agrolites and various other things. So I don't do every Long Beach Dub Allstars gig, but I'd say I probably do like 25% of them, and have been kind of doing that since about 2018.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Wow. That is awesome.
Yeah, we were super excited for that comeback too. To get to see Long Beach Dub Allstars again, even if it's mostly a different lineup, we're like, oh, this is so cool to see again.
Yeah, really it's great. It's really fun, and it's fun to be up there, and see like the love that the audiences have. Just seeing like Opie on stage, and it's really nice to kind of like, I feel like a fan on stage a lot of the time.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's got to be a great feeling.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And
a great
plus
feeling.
playing Sublime songs too, that's probably always fun.
It is. Although I have to say that over the years since I've joined the band, they've really shifted the focus towards original Long Beach Dub Allstars material. Mm-hmm. And off the top of my head, I think we only do one Sublime song in the set currently. I think that's Scarlet Begonias, which of course is a Grateful Dead cover in and of itself. Yeah. But I and then we do like an instrumental version of Summertime, I think. But other than that, I think we're kind of just we're sticking to like Long Beach Dub Allstars. They've got the 2 albums that were made back in the day, and we play a lot of those songs. And then since I've joined the band, we've released another 2 albums. Right. The self-titled and an album that came out last year called Echo Mountain High.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we kind of focus on songs from that their discography, and pretty primarily now, which is cool.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
And some Jamaican covers too. We do some covers.
Yeah, of course. And that makes sense now that Sublime has sort of rebanded, with Jacob Knoll and stuff. Yep. So you get the separate parties. You can see Sublime, you can see Long Beach Dub Allstars. They're totally separate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
Which is kind of great that this is happening, and like the timing of it is because now it can really be those 2 like distinct things, which is actually a good opportunity for like Long Beach Dub Allstars to grow in terms of like their catalog of songs and music to focus on. That's really great.
Yeah, I think so because Opie has, in the OG days of Long Beach Dub Allstars, there was like you had Ras and Opie and Jack Manis. And different people who were, and Marshall, of course, and different people who were writing songs. And now now the whole band collaborates on songs, but Opie writes like 90% of the lyrics now. And he's really, in my opinion, become a really good songwriter. The songs on both these records, I just think are really good. Plus he has in between the 2 records, he put out a solo album called Opie and Family. The songs on that record are great. He's turned into a great songwriter, and so it's cool for Long Beach Dub Allstars to kind of be able to like showcase this talented dude the way they are at the moment.
Totally. And Long Beach Dub Allstars was around 20 something years ago, and to just come back and his voice is still there. It's so cool to see.
His voice is better. I think Opie has gotten better in every way. His singing his singing has gotten better. His songwriting is great. Yeah, I think they sound better now. They sound great. It's awesome. It's a great band.
We love LBDA for sure.
Absolutely. That is so cool. So I was wondering too, like from that, and you guys started in 2018, you were saying with LBDA, right?
Well, I started in 2018. They had been they had started it up a couple years prior. Yeah.
So then how were you able to work on that and then also put together like the stuff for like your own solo album and juggle like that next iteration of things that you were doing?
Well, Long Beach Dub Allstars, it's not like a full-time touring band. And like I said, there's subs, you know what I mean? And at that time in 2018, I wasn't doing anything. I didn't have a job. I wasn't in a full-time band anymore. And so even though I was doing Long Beach Dub Allstars, it's not like they were busy every week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I had been writing songs. I never, I'm always like, I'm not a super prolific songwriter. Like I don't write a song once a week. You know what I mean? Like my songs are pretty few and far between, but I'm always like thinking about it and just kind of, amassing songs here and there. And when I left the Expanders, I did have like a couple dozen songs, and was trying to think of something to do with them. And in the Expanders, the way I would kind of I would bring the songs to the band was I would make little demos myself of just like recording a little acoustic version of just me playing guitar and singing the song, and then maybe put a harmony on it. But that would be about it. Just pretty stripped down versions, and send it to them to try to be like, here, like, check this song out. Let me know if you guys think this would be good for the band. And if so, you can kind of get familiar with it so that when we work on it in rehearsal, we're all coming from a place of like being familiar with the tune. But I had always, even though those recordings were just, for demo purposes, I always really liked them. And I thought they had a cool like magic of their own. So my idea when I I'd found myself with no band, my idea was to kind of maybe put out a slightly more hi-fi version of those recordings. And originally the acoustic album was just going to be that, really just me playing guitar, singing, put some harmonies on it, maybe add a little bit of overdubs here and there, but it was going to be really, really stripped down. And the only thing I knew was that I wanted my brother, Patrick Morrison, to be on to play on it in some way, because Patrick's a great musician, Grammy nominated guitarist and banjo player. And he knows Jamaican music because he's my little brother. And so I grew up like always just sharing music with him, and he loves it the way I love it. And so he's somebody who he's that rare combo of somebody who's really proficient in their instruments, but also knows Jamaican music. So I trust him in that realm to know the intricacies of that specific rhythm and everything. And so I wanted him on the record. And so when I started recording it, I was sending him, I was like, okay, maybe put like a little banjo on this or a little lead guitar. And he had the idea of throwing some upright bass on it, which I was kind of against at first. I was like, no, it's going to be too full. Like I'm trying to have it be really stripped down. He's like, let me just try it. So he recorded one song and put banjo and upright bass on it. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh crap. Now the whole album has to sound like this, because it sounded like, I was like, yeah, this is it. This is definitely like the way this should sound. So it kind of was like, it was Patrick's nudging that really like made that record sound the way it does. I don't know if I answered your question in terms of like the time that I spent on it. Yeah, it just was something that I was just working on whenever I could. I didn't have any full-time obligations, so I was trying to be disciplined about just going to record and going to work on it. And then the pandemic happened, right. You know what I'm saying? And and then we all had a lot of time to do all kinds of stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, honestly, you answered the next couple questions I was going to ask you too, because I'm so interested in like the sound of your album because of how it came together, like the background that your brother has in terms of like, did he kind of like really get like, what was his primary instrument? Was it the banjo? It wasn't the banjo, was it upright bass?
He, on the album, he plays lead guitar, banjo, and upright bass.
And for his like upbringing, what was like his first instrument that kind of led him down the rabbit holes of all
guitar?
That?
He's a guitar player. It's kind of the same with John Butcher from the Expanders and Patrick. I taught both of them how to play guitar, and then they very quickly surpassed me by leaps and bounds in terms of their like how their guitar playing. For me, I've always used I can play rhythm guitar, and I've always used guitar playing as a vehicle for songwriting. And as soon as I got to the point where I was like, oh, okay, I know enough to be able to use this to write songs, I kind of shifted my focus to like practicing singing and practicing songwriting. Whereas John and Patrick just like are in love with guitar and just never have stopped learning how to play, you know? So Patrick was a guitar player, and then he had friends that were really into like Western swing and stuff like that. And so he started playing that in that genre with them and started there was just a need for banjo at different places, old jazz stuff, jazz banjo.
Jazz banjo.
And he got really into that. And so, but, you know, Jamaican music, even though once ska started in around 59, 60, there you don't really hear banjo on anything. A lot of people don't realize that the banjo is an African instrument and was very prominent in Jamaica prior to the advent of ska. They had a music called mento, which was kind of like the first indigenous Jamaican music that's very similar to calypso, but has some differentiating rhythmic components. And there's a lot of banjo on that. It's very banjo heavy. And so for somebody to, like Patrick, who's very good at banjo and also understands that history within Jamaican music, it was kind of like a perfect fit. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's so cool. I mean, it's something that you really don't hear too often. And like, even just like the scales and things that were being thrown into some of the tracks, like almost as if there's some like Eastern kind of scales, like in like inspiration in like some of them, and just like the strumming patterns. Like it was so different to kind of hear how it all kind of comes together, but also have this like really good foundation and just like a rootsy, awesome acoustic set.
Oh, thank you.
It's really interesting, you know?
Yeah, I do think, I was just talking to Roger, because Roger mixed the whole record and was the engineer for it. And, you know, whether you like the album or don't like the album, I think one objective truth about that album is that it is unique sonically. There are not a lot of albums that have that instrumentation. It's totally acoustic, you know, hand drum. So I'm playing hand drum, the kete drum, rhythm guitar, and doing all the vocals. And then Patrick is doing what I mentioned, bass, banjo, and lead guitar. And there's no electronic instruments whatsoever. Everything, like the upright bass is just a mic on the bass, mic on the guitars. Wow. Everything is mic. There's no amplifiers. I don't really know of another album that's completely acoustic but focuses on, you know, that the period of Jamaican music that we did. So it was cool it was nice to kind of like have that vision come to life the way it did, because I was definitely happy with that aspect of it.
And your father is the one who plays harmonica on that one song, is that right?
Yeah, so he's on one song called Merciless. He plays harmonica, and so now up here we have like a little family band. It's called Man Like Devin and the Relatives. So I'm from LA, but about 3 years ago my wife and I moved up here to the Central California coast, San Luis Obispo area. We're in a little town called Morro Bay, and we've been playing a lot around here. And we have a little band we put together called Man Like Devin and the Relatives. And it's me, my dad, who moved up here too, my dad and my mom, my cousin Alex, who lives up here too. He plays bass in the band. And then we have our homie Daryl, who we call Uncle Daryl, play drums. Even though my dad is only on harmonica on one song on the first record, he's now in the band permanently, and he'll be featured more on this next one. That
is cool, and a perfect segue, because I was going to ask, when is Volume 2 coming?
So I'm working on it. This was always, from the beginning, this was always going to be a 2-album, kind of like these 2 albums are connected. I wrote all the songs for both records before the first album came out, and it was just kind of sat down one day and made a decision. All right, this set of songs are going to go on the first record. This set of songs are going to go on the second record. I'm going to do the same, even though I mentioned we have this whole family band now. Just for these 2 records, I just want it sonically to be the same. So even though my dad will be on some more harmonica, it's still going to be me and Patrick just doing the record. And it's in progress. I think the plan is to, this time, instead of waiting to have the whole album come together, I think I'm going to release a series of singles, which I did last time, but it was more like a traditional album rollout. Like the album was done, and then like we had a few months where we would release a single per month and then put the album out. This time I'm not going to wait for the album to be finished. I don't think. I'm just going to like do a track, put it out, do a track, put it out. And then when there's enough for an album, you know, put that out, maybe save a few of them or something. But I'm going to try that this time.
Nice.
But the songs are written, they're in the process of being recorded.
And that's is that also going to be a Rootfire release, or are you just going to self-release it?
I don't know. We haven't really gotten to that point. I'm talking. I think that's always an option. But there's some other people I'm talking to also. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Not sure yet.
Nice. Very much looking forward.
Are all the relatives that you play with now going to like pop up on this album, or is it just still going to be kind of traditionally?
I think it's going to be the same. I think it's going to be me and Patrick. I think moving forward after this, we'll definitely do some relatives recordings. But
that's cool.
Like I said, I always envisioned these 2 albums to be kind of two sides of the same coin. So I want to keep it kind of the same sonic situation on this one.
Now, sonically too, like acoustic, I love acoustic albums. I love acoustic reggae. I feel like especially this time of year, like James was saying, it just resonates, you know? And is that kind of always been what your preference in terms of sound is? Like, I know acoustic's probably how you write most of things, but like, what was the choice to keep things just acoustic?
No, I wouldn't say it's my preference. I love acoustic music, but I also like love, you know, heavy Jamaican rhythm sections. And I really miss the Expanders. I miss being in a band that had heavy drum and bass, you know. Cheekies and John Asher are two of my, I think they're the two best. I think they're the best reggae bass drum combo in reggae outside of Jamaica. Like I stand by that. They're amazing. And I miss that. But it was like I just wanted to work with what I had, you know. I didn't have a band. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I had always dug these acoustic demos I was making. And like over the years, even when I was in the Expanders, I would sometimes do like some solo acoustic shows. And I just thought it would be nice to have a record that people could get into and then kind of know what to expect when they came and saw me doing my acoustic thing, which is ironic because that's not what ended up happening. You know what I mean? Like I didn't achieve that because,
interesting.
You know, now when they come to see me, if they're familiar with the record, they're expecting to hear some bass and some banjo and some harmonica and some harmonies. You know what I mean? And so that was kind of a failure because I do still like to just show up with just me and my guitar and play. And that almost never happens just because I don't know. It's just like not a thing that happens yet. But that was really the thought behind it, is like, let me just do an acoustic thing. And, you know, like I said, the Expanders, when we first started, we started in high school and then stopped and did the punk thing. But then when we reformed, it was really just me and John. And we were just playing guitar and singing harmonies and like learning Ethiopians and Gladiator songs and stuff like that. And working on harmonies. And John Butcher we kind of put this thing together where, you know, in reggae with the full band, the organ will play what's called the bubble, right? So it's like, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, ooh, ah, ooh, ooh, ah, ooh, ooh, ah, ooh, ooh, ah, ooh, right? And to me, that's what that left hand is doing. The is like a really important part of. It's like there's bass and there's drums and then there's that, like the bubble. You know, that's like what's driving the rhythm section. So when John and I would just play together acoustically, he kind of worked out this way of like doing that on the guitar. For anyone who's familiar with guitar, like he was kind of playing like what's called power chords, where it's just like two notes, two low notes. And he was kind of using his thumb and forefinger and like bubbling and mimicking what the left hand of that organ would do. And so it filled in the groove really nicely. And there's a lot of that on this record. Like if you were just listening to it on the acoustic record that I put out, there's some songs where you might think like, oh, I hear an organ. It's like, no, that's not an organ. That's Patrick. And I think I did it on a couple songs too. Mimicking that, or I guess like simulating that organ sound on an acoustic guitar. So we learned little tricks like that kind of helps with the whole feel of the acoustic.
That's really cool, and not something you hear from anywhere else.
No. And also like crazy inspirational too, because like so many people, especially like if you love the genre and you're a musician, you wait until you have all the puzzle pieces to start actually making music. And you use the fact that you don't have the puzzle pieces to not go for it. And it just seems like no matter what situation you're in, no matter what puzzle pieces are there or aren't, you just go for it and you keep creating. And that's just the essence of a musician. That's awesome.
Well, to me, thank you. I just, you know, everyone approaches music from a different standpoint.
Yeah.
I happen to be I've just always been a fan of songwriting and good songs and good lyrics and good melodies, you know? And so for me, that is the premise. That's the foundation of what you need to make music. If you have that, then everything after that is just kind of icing on the cake. You know what I mean? That's why you could have someone like Bob Dylan who just plays guitar and doesn't even have an exceptionally good voice, but his songs are just so good that he's just an iconic all-time great, you know? And so for me, I always knew that was like, as long as I have a song that I like, then that song is going to, you know, stand on its own, despite what kind of wrapping we put it in. It could be part of a heavy rhythm section like the Expanders albums, or it could be something really stripped down and acoustic, but it'll still have that quality of being a good song, you know? So I think that's why I've always been down to experiment and do different kinds of things. Because as long as I have that, what to me is a crucial component, then everything else is just kind of like, all right, like let's see like how this works itself out.
That totally makes sense.
Love that.
And it sounds like the future is not really planned or written for you yet, right? I mean, there's always the chance that you could be forming a band in the future that would not be an acoustic band, right? I mean, that's always a possibility, and you could do more of these acoustic albums. Just
for sure.
Don't know yet.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, I've got, like I said, I've got these 2 albums, right? But then, yeah, after that, there's no need to keep doing acoustic stuff. I'm sure I'll always keep playing acoustic gigs, and I'm sure I'll put out more albums. Mm-hmm. But like Roger and Opie from Long Beach Dub Allstars, we kind of started this little group called Slingshot Productions, right. And we've been putting out kind of like digital 80s style dance hall tracks. So I love that genre. I love dance hall, especially stuff from the like mid late 80s, and so that's always really fun to do. John and Cheekies and I from the Expanders are doing, there's a tribute show in October for Greg Lee from Hepcat, who passed away a few months ago, very tragically and unexpectedly. And there's a big tribute show in LA for him, and a lot of artists are coming to sing some songs. And Cheekies and John and I are going to sing at least one song, maybe 2. So definitely, like, you know, the Expanders is something that could keep happening moving forward. So yeah, there's lots of possibilities.
Very cool. We didn't even touch on the Reggae Podclash, which for me was like, it was like going to school. Like the way that you two would bring a record each, play it, talk about it, and then the next one would play a record, you'd talk about it, and then you'd have some iconic guest on every time. And during the pandemic, that was really like oh man, there's a new Podclash out, I'm gonna spend the next 2 hours and just watch that. Perfect. Really got me through. But also just like how you guys appreciate the music and know everything about what you're listening to, and like Roger would be like, oh, I know that this is not this keyboard player, it's this keyboard player, even though there's no credits listed ever anywhere on this. You know, it was just so fascinating to watch. So I just had to say, I really love the Podclash. I know time is always the issue with booking those, but hoping you guys come back and do another one.
During the pandemic, we had nothing, you know, it's like all we had was time. So it was like, it became something where once things started picking up again, it just was really hard to like keep that going. But that was fun. That was, you know, and it's not like it's out of the question that we'll ever do it again, but that the pandemic, I mean, the Podclash was really special for us. Me and Roger had always wanted to do a podcast together. We had talked about it. We had made attempts in the past. Like we even got together one time and like recorded a pilot episode like before the pandemic, and it just never really, looking back, we were thinking way too hard about it, you know? But then once it kind of came together organically, it was like Reed, who's the head of Root Fire, as you guys know, had asked me to, Root Fire was hosting a lot of artists doing live streams, just to make some money for themselves, really, and to provide some live music for people. And so he had asked me to do a live stream, and it went really well. And he was like, how would you like to do it once a week, you know? And he was like, maybe you could even like interview some people. And I was like, well, you know, why don't we have that be 2 separate things? Like, why don't I do my live stream and just sing songs? And then Roger and I can maybe get together and interview some artists. So once it started, it just kind of fell into place like ridiculously easily. And it was great having Reed to kind of do a lot of the legwork in terms of reaching out to artists and people that we wanted to interview. And, you know, not only did we have more time, but these artists had more time. It was like, it was like, okay, you know, can you do it Tuesday? And they're like, yeah, I could do it Tuesday, you know?
I'm sure now it's probably near impossible.
Right.
Yeah.
So
struggle.
That was fun. And you know, those episodes are all available, and you know, they're cool things to have for posterity. Definitely several of the artists that we had on have since passed away, you know. So we were glad that we got some of those recordings. Yeah,
and some iconic guests too. So if anyone's listening and hasn't checked out the Reggae Podclash yet, definitely recommend. You'll definitely learn a lot of things.
Well, we learned a lot from that. Sure. Just having those artists on. Some of those, like one of my favorite episodes was the Ken Booth episode. You know, he's an old great of Jamaican. He started in the ska days, and he's just considered one of the great voices in Jamaican music. And he's one of the last guys from that era who's still with us. And he, it turned into like, we would ask him, "Oh, what about this song?" And in response, he would just sing the song. and then tell us a little bit about it. And then we'd say like, "Oh, and you know, what about this one?" And then he would just sing the song and tell us a little bit about it. And it was just moments like that were just like insane.
That's gold.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't even imagine. That's awesome.
No.
Our only thing close to that is we had Jack Johnson on the podcast.
I was just thinking about
that.
that.
We were talking about some song, and he just started singing it, and we were like, wow, he's just singing for us. That's cool.
Then he goes into a whole backstory of it, and I'm just like, my jaw's on the floor. I'm like, well, this moment just happened, you know? It's like, as if to be able to facilitate that moment, like not just for ourselves, but like for whoever's listening. It's those special moments in time that you become so grateful for. And like even being able to have this conversation that we're having with you, like being able to share this with other artists and to be able to have them come on here and give that perspective and talk about their process. I mean, it's a special thing, and it's a special feeling.
Yeah, I think so. It's important. I know lots of people love watching this kind of stuff. You know, if I'm going to use like the treadmill or something, I always set my iPad up, and I'm trying to that's usually the thing that'll keep my mind focused and not thinking about the exercise, you know, is like finding some interview. I was just watching a Bunny Wailer interview yesterday, and I found like a Burning Spear interview, and it's I think artists sometimes don't realize that that the things that they've done, or the some of the processes they've had are things that they take for granted because that's their everyday life, but other people find them, you know, very interesting. I do. I definitely find picking artists' brain extremely interesting. And especially, you know, some of the old Jamaican artists we got to interview on the Podclash, just, you know, being able to like hold up like a record and be like, hey, like, what do you know, this is, I don't really know anything about this record. Like, can you please tell me like what, and then having that jog their memory and just wherever that, you know, led them, just like those moments are just kind of priceless.
Right. And I'm so glad that you got some of those interviews too, because not many people are getting those now for those foundation artists. So now they live forever. We can always watch them.
Right.
Well, but thank you so much, man. And like, honestly, this whole perspective that you've been able to give as well. And I think it's so great that we got to hear that backstory of how you entered into the reggae world and the different kind of approach and respect that you guys have from the takes you've taken with the expanders and just growing into what you're doing on your own. We just look forward to more stuff, man. And everything you're putting out, it's been fire. It's awesome to listen to. It's different. It's unique. And it's really exciting, man. So thank you for all of that stuff. It's awesome.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Very nice of you.
Are you still doing guitar and vocal lessons and mixtapes for people?
I haven't really been. I guess that link is still up there, but I haven't done it. I haven't done it in a while. I'm up here, you know, I work at a restaurant up here. I'm like waiting tables, and then working on the album and playing with Long Beach Dub Allstars, and you know, Man Like Devin and the Relatives are playing, and trying to get back into DJing. Like Roger and Opie were just up here 2 days ago. We did like a little DJ event at a spot up here. So just like keeping busy with a lot of things.
Nice. That's
it's fun.
Good.
It's a good time at the moment.
Awesome. Something I always ask guests that are on here, are Are there any contemporary reggae bands out there now that you're like really, really liking and really want people to maybe check out? Something that you're really into right now?
Well, in terms of contemporary Jamaican music,
sure, even better.
You know,
great.
It's like obviously Kabaka Pyramid, who just won a Grammy. I'm a huge fan of him. You know, Chronix obviously is one of my favorite artists, and he hasn't been doing much in terms of musical output, but I hear that there's rumblings of him starting to release to work on new music, and I'm very excited for that. You know, there's a group from Long Beach, LA area called Eureka Sound. Some kids that, well, I mean, they're not kids anymore, but I've known these kids for a long time. Ryan, their keyboard player, actually came like 10 plus years ago and did merch for the Expanders on the road. That's how I met him.
Nice.
I don't even think he was like playing at that time, but they have a band called Eureka Sound, and they sound great. They're just such a tight band. I always got to shout out 4-piece band from Guam. Those are my good friends. One of the great kind of underappreciated contemporary reggae bands. 4-piece. It's FORPEACE band. I know Rootfire put out a record from them a few years ago. They're amazing, and they just put out a new record called Massive and Crew.
I gotta check it out.
So yeah, those are some of the groups. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody. But that's who I like.
No, that's awesome, because we're always trying to get people to listen to more music. You know, we can recommend music that we love, but it's always great to hear, you know, what other people are listening to. So that gives us stuff to listen to too. So it's perfect.
Nice. Exactly. I was gonna say, now it's time to go back and do some homework on my end. I'm excited.
Especially those first two 4-piece band albums. They're on all the streaming sites. What do they call? You'll find them. Their first two albums especially are just like, every song is good. And I'm a huge fan of the keyboard player, and he splits the songwriting and lead vocal duties in that band. His name is JC. He's from Hawaii originally, from Oahu, and they had a band out there called Rudical Rhythm around 2010 era. And that's one of my favorite bands of all time. Every time I'm around that dude, I get like super fanboy, even though he's like a friend. I fan out on him. We did a tour. Expanders did a tour in 2017. It was a headlining Expanders tour, and we brought Ayaterra as direct support and 4-piece band as the opener.
Oh,
and just being able to watch 4-piece band every night was just like so inspiring. They played at our wedding. We got them to play at our wedding.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, they're one of my favorites. I recommend them.
Oh, awesome. I didn't know that guy was from Rudical Rhythm and is in 4-piece band. That's really cool, because I'm more familiar with them.
Rudical Rhythm is like, it's one of those groups that like, I think it's a combination of like the Guam and Hawaii being so far from the US, so it's hard to like get here and tour. You know what I'm saying? They just never got the exposure that I feel they deserved, because they're such a great band. Both of those. Rudical Rhythm stayed pretty heavily in Hawaii, I'm pretty sure. But 4-piece band did get out there and tour, but it's just like, I just know, as being a touring band who lived in the States, what a financial burden it was, you know? So I can only imagine, like, you know, getting plane tickets on top of that and all that stuff.
Yeah, and they don't sound like the other Hawaiian reggae bands that are out there either. They don't sound anything like that.
No, they have their own sound for sure. They're more similar to like Ukla the Mock than they are to some of like the more poppy Hawaiian bands, which I love. There was a time maybe I wasn't super into the more poppy Hawaiian bands, but I actually really appreciate it now. I think having spent a lot of time in Hawaii, and just kind of driving around listening to, they have like several radio stations that just play reggae out there. You know, it's just there are bands in Hawaii that are like superstars on the island that no one here even knows about. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's kind of cool in that sense. Hawaii, because Hawaii's cool like that. On the one hand, it's like definitely, you know, part of America in terms of like a lot of cultural aspects. But then on the flip side, it's maintained people who are native Hawaiians have worked so hard to like maintain so much of that culture, and within that is like this kind of unique microcosm, like this unique music scene. It's like almost like a different country. It's like if you go to India, there's going to be Indian groups that are stars there that nobody in America knows about. Right. And Hawaii, even though it's technically part of America, like has that, I feel like, which is, it's not like, you can't really say the same about like different states in the U.S.
No,
you know what I mean?
Definitely not.
But Hawaii has that for sure. People who will sell out big venues there who really couldn't get much, traction going in the States, so it's cool. I really like that vibe.
For sure. I mean, if we have to go to Hawaii and do some homework, Mark and I guess got to book it.
I guess we got to do it then,
I think
right?
you should.
Well, Devin.
Hawaii's the best.
Devin, thank you again for taking the time. I know we've been trying to do this for a long time. So glad we were able to do it. Man Like Devin,
man, thank you guys.
Wheel and Shoulder. If you haven't listened to it, go listen to it. It's the perfect time right now. Really looking forward to Volume 2. Really looking forward to hoping to catch you on the road. Maybe catch you in California at some point. But man, thank you so much for all you do for the scene, and just keep doing it, please.
Thanks, man. Likewise. Thank you guys for having me. This was really fun.
Absolutely. And when the next volume releases too, if you want to jump back on and we can break down the album and talk about it in length too, we'd love to do that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome.
I'm totally down.
Awesome.
Cool.
All right, man. Awesome. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure meeting you, man.
Likewise. Thank you guys.
Take care.
All right. See ya.
Thanks for listening to A Conversation in Dub, hosted by James Pasqua and Mark Raimondi. Conversation in Dub is brought to you by Rootfire, a platform for reggae music worldwide with a mission to empower artists and nurture the community that supports them. You're here because you love reggae music and want to be a part of that community? We're here to help you connect the dots.
This show is produced and edited by James Pasqua. Our theme music is an original composition called Keep Dubbin' by James Pasqua and Mark Raimondi. If you want to hear previous episodes containing full songs, you can find them all on Spotify. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at A Conversation in Dub. And if you have any feedback, requests, or just want to talk about music, reach out there or email us at aconversationindub@gmail.com. Make sure to rate us on your podcast platform of choice. And as always, keep dubbing.